They gave me 72 hours to destroy my own house with a smile on my face. Yeah, that was the greeting I got on a random Tuesday morning right in the middle of my coffee, sitting in the cedar cabin I built with my own two hands. And when I say cabin, I don't mean some rickety backyard shack. I mean my home office, 6 months of sawdust calluses and more YouTube tutorials than I care to admit, finished out with all the right permits, insulated and wired, even had the county inspector using it as a model for how things ought to be done. So there I was, sipping coffee, thinking about debugging code, when this woman, Rebecca Thornfield, new president of the Millbrook Heights HOA, comes striding into my backyard with that confident I know what's best walk. Black blazer, clipboard, that smile that says I'm here to help, but mostly to tell you what you're doing wrong. She flashes her pearly whites, shakes my hand like she's closing on a house, and starts in about how she's just introducing herself to residents. But you know how some people size up a room the second they walk in? That was her, but she was scanning my backyard mentally, rearranging everything, probably adding up fines in her head. She points at my cabin, calls it rustic, which I'm pretty sure is code for, I don't like it, but I'll pretend to be polite. I thank her, tell her about the permits, the county inspector's gold star, and I swear the minute I mention legal and approved, her eyes get hard. That's when the charm wears off. Suddenly, Rebecca's all business. I'm afraid we have some concerns about your structure, she says, pulling out a violation notice that could have doubled as a Halloween prop. Bold red letters, threats of $500 a day, the whole works. Nothing specific about which rule I broke, just some hand-waving about aesthetic integrity, the kind of language that makes you want to ask if offending her personal taste is now a crime. I try to play it cool, ask her to show me the actual HOA rule my cabin supposedly violates. She drops the smile and slides into that HOA speak. The HOA has broad authority, Jake. The bottom line is the structure needs to go. She leaves me with the notice and the kind of cold anger that comes from being threatened in your own backyard for building something the county itself put in the good example column. And that's the moment I realized this was no friendly neighborhood tour. Rebecca didn't want to chat. She wanted a scalp, and mine was apparently next in line. You know what they say about people who like to throw their weight around? They're the ones who fall the hardest. That night, I did what any decent engineer would do. Spread out the paperwork, cracked open. Every HOA document, looked for the fine print. What I found? The HOA rules weren't always this bad. They used to be reasonable, mostly just common sense about mowing lawns and not letting houses fall apart. But then, right around the time Rebecca wormed her way in, the amendments started stacking up. Vague, restrictive, clearly written to give someone a hammer to hit their least favorite neighbor. The next day, I confirmed with the county my cabin was legit up and down, no daylight for the HOA to squeeze through. County inspectors stamp photos, you name it. But Rebecca was back before noon this time with Marcus Webb, the HOA's lawyer, a guy who looked like he'd lost a bet. And behind them, a couple neighbors, including Mrs. Patterson, who gave me the universal sorry man shrug, and Tim and Sarah Chen, who seemed about as thrilled to be there as you'd expect. Marcus goes through the motions, threatens legal action, but I'm ready. Spread out the permits, walk him through every document. He's clearly not loving what he sees, especially after I mention that Denver court case where HOA covenants lost out to county law. Marcus looks ready to bail, but Rebecca, now red-faced, doubles down. You have 72 hours or we sue. The lawyer, meanwhile, is mouthing sorry as he hustles to catch up with her. Tim and Sarah hang back, say most folks think my cabin's actually pretty cool, and that's when I decide no more playing defense. If Rebecca wants to go to war, she's not ready for the weapons I can bring. First, I call up an old friend, Tom Chin, a private investigator who's made a living tracking down corporate scammers. Told him the story, and he's on it. Meanwhile, I go for a walk around the neighborhood, and wouldn't you know it, Rebecca's own place is a catalog of unpermitted upgrades. New deck, extended driveway, fancy landscaping, none of which I ever saw go through the proper channels. Then I dig into the HOA records. Turns out since Rebecca's been president, there's this landscaping company, Greenfield Corporation, getting all the business-exclusive contracts, inflated rates. The phone rings at 6 sharp toms on the line, and he's excited. Turns out Greenfield Corporation doesn't even exist. Fake address, fake CEO, fake everything. And guess who's on the bank account? Rebecca Thornfield. She's not just pushing her weight, she's running a full-blown scam, siphoning money out of every pocket in the neighborhood, funding her own upgrades. And get this? Half her home modifications are illegal. No permits, nothing. She's been funneling HOA cash into her place while threatening me over a structure the county used as a how-to guide. But the real kicker, Rebecca's over-leveraged borrowed to the hilt, barely holding on thanks to her little HOA side hustle. So when Rebecca texts me later that night trying to play nice, let's compromise, maybe relocate your cabin. Maybe we can work something out. It's obvious she knows the walls are closing in. I tell her we'll talk. Then I get all of Tom's evidence organized, ready for the big showdown. She shows up the next morning looking more please don't hate me than I own this place, even brings coffee. Suggests Greenfield do my landscaping at a discount. The irony's so thick you could spread it on toast. So I ask point blank, does Greenfield Corporation actually exist? She nearly chokes, goes pale, stammers out a non-answer. That's when the cavalry arrives. Half the neighborhood walks into my backyard. Mrs. Patterson, Tim and Sarah, a bunch more. Turns out Carol Williams, retired teacher, had tried to help with the HOA books and got stonewalled by Rebecca, then magically got code violations and a smashed mailbox the next week. She started following the money, too. Greenfield isn't real, she tells everyone, and suddenly the floodgates open. Everyone's got a story about petty fines, forced fees, threats. Rebecca tries to spin it, goes back to accusing me, but nobody's buying it anymore. So I lay it all out. Tom's bank records, proof of the scam, the HOA's money trail, all of it. It's pandemonium. People shouting, asking Rebecca how much she stole. She calls the cops in a last-ditch move, but the officers take one look at my permits and the evidence and basically tell her, "Lady, you're the criminal here." That was the end of the 72-hour countdown, but it wasn't over for Rebecca. That night, Mrs. Patterson warns me Rebecca's calling an emergency HOA meeting trying to kick me out altogether. I'm laughing, but I know it's serious. So I get my evidence straight, and when the meeting rolls around, the place is packed. Rebecca, desperate, spends 10 minutes painting me as public enemy number 1. Then it's my turn. I walk up, show the photos of her unpermitted home upgrades, reveal her ownership of Greenfield, lay out the financials, the conflicts, the theft. People start adding up how much she cost them. The board wants answers. Rebecca threatens to sue the whole neighborhood, says she'll tank everyone's property values if she's ousted. But her own supporters turn on her. Within minutes, she's voted out unanimously. But I wasn't done. See, while she was busy threatening me, I'd quietly purchased her mortgage. All that debt she'd racked up, the bank wanted out, and I snapped it up for pennies on the dollar. Now I'm her landlord, and when she finds out, she loses it. Screaming phone calls, threats, but the law's on my side. I give her a choice: pay triple rent or face foreclosure. She picks the rent. She doesn't have a choice. 6 months later, Millbrook Heights is a different place. Rebecca's a ghost working 2 jobs to pay me rent her fancy car, gone, replaced by a beat-up Honda, while the new HOA board undoes her damage. Landscaping costs drop, neighbors actually talk to each other again. My cabin becomes a bit of a landmark, and I help folks get their own projects permitted the right way. Word spreads. Other neighborhoods call me in to help them root out their own little dictators. Turns out bullies like Rebecca are everywhere, and if you push back with the right evidence, you can topple them too. Now, every time I watch Rebecca drive away in her Civic to work one of her jobs, I can't help but smile into my coffee. I gave her the same 72-hour ultimatum she once tried to give me. Some folks say maybe I went too far, but I say justice comes in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's dramatic, and sometimes it's just sitting back in your cabin collecting rent from the person who thought they owned you. So let me ask, what would you have done? Ever had to take on the neighborhood dictator? Comment below, share your stories, and let's talk about what real justice looks like in a community that finally stood up for itself.